The ancient Greeks have always been known and admired for their bronze statuary. Throughout this video, we will take a closer look at the techniques used to make these incredible sculptures, the innovations made by Greeks in this area, as well as some of the mythology behind many of the statues. Before getting into the techniques used, it is important to note why bronze was used as opposed to copper for these statues. As discussed by Colette Hemingway, a historian of the Met Museum, it was during the 3rd millennium BC that ancient foundry workers recognized the real advantages of using bronze over pure copper for making statuary. Bronze produces a better casting than pure copper and has a superior tensile strength, which is the maximum stress a material can withstand while being stretched or pulled before breaking, making it easier for artists to work with this material. The earliest large-scale Greek bronze statues had very simple forms that were a result of the method used to create them. This method was known as spiraleton, literally meaning hammer-driven. In this process, parts of the statues are made separately from hammered sheets of metal and attached to one another with rivets. These metal sheets were often embellished by hammering the bronze over wood forms in order to produce reliefs, or by incising designs using a technique called tracing. By the late Archaic period, spiraleton went out of use as a primary method and lost wax casting became the major technique for producing bronze statuary. This lost wax casting of bronze is achieved in 3 different ways: solid lost wax casting, hollow lost wax casting by the direct process, and hollow lost wax casting by the indirect process. These techniques were discussed in more detail by Hemingway as well as Brian Sparks in his journal article, Greek Bronzes. This statue, which is one of 2 that were found at the ancient shipwreck, is referred to as Bronze A of the Riace bronzes. These bronze statues were created using hollow lost wax casting, and originally, the eyes were in white calcite with iris in glass paste and carbuncle teardrops in pink stone. Lips, eyelashes, and nipples were made of copper, while the teeth are made of silver paper as discussed in the online source from the museum in Reggio Calabria. While it remains nearly intact, it is missing its shield, sword, and helmet. In comparison to the marble Critios boy, discussed in the book by Fred Kleiner, which was the first statue to show how a person naturally stands, the warrior's weight shift between legs is more pronounced. His head is turned more forcefully to the right, his shoulders tilt, his hips swing more markedly, and his arms have been freed from the body. This natural motion in space replaced archaic frontality and rigidity. The statue would have been shiny and had a radiant effect, which goes with the idea that this is Zeus. It is mentioned by Harrison Zucker that it is believed that the eyebrows, perhaps the beard, and certainly the thunderbolt would have been inlaid with silver, so there would have been the gleaming warm color of the bronze against the brilliant flashes of silver. His eyes would have been inlaid with glass, creating a figure that was not only gleaming but also striding towards the viewer, depending on where you stand. Looking back just 100 years to the Archaic period, Greek sculptors were making sculptures out of marble, and they were very contained with limbs staying close to the body. During this early classical period, which is sometimes known as the severe style, an interest in figures that are more open, where the limbs that are apart, and figures that move into the space of the viewer. All of this is possible because of the use of bronze. The book by Fred Kleiner also discussed the fact that both arms are boldly extended and the right heel is raised off the ground, which draws attention to the lightness and tensile strength of the hollow lost wax casting of the life-size statues. Zeus looks powerful, almost superhuman in strength, but still human in his nudity. Plato, an ancient Greek philosopher, talked about the idea that the gods were the perfect manifestation and that we, as humans, are an inferior reflection of the perfect divine realm of gods, making the earthly realm of man corrupt. In this statue, it is clear to see how the Greeks were setting up this idealized human male body in a god's form and how we are just a reflection of that. Unlike other religions like Christianity and Islam, Greek religion was polytheistic. Polytheistic gods, as discussed by Jan Bremmer, only covered a limited sphere of life. For example, Ares is the god of warfare and Hera is the goddess of womanhood. As a result of this, piety did not mean devotion to one god only, because each god or goddess represented a different aspect of life. Therefore, they all needed to be worshipped.